Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to start in a few minutes. People are coming in slowly but surely. We're up to about 450 participants, and we're expecting well over 1,000. So we'll just give everyone a few more minutes. So please bear with us. Thank you. Hello, hello. So nice to see so many teachers. I saw Mexico, Morocco, Jordan, France. Hey, hi, Jillian. Germany and Greece. Lovely to see so many teachers. We'll be starting shortly. So hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us for today's session with Greg Wagstaff. There are still a number of teachers coming in, but I think we should get started. Hello, Wendy, who just joined us. Just before I hand over to Greg, I would like to just do a little bit of housekeeping. This session will be recorded and will be sent to you along with the certificates of attendance. If you have any questions for Greg, please put them in the Q&A section and keep the chat just for an exchange. And behind the scenes, I'm present. My name is Emily Jagalu. I'm joined by my colleague, Gabriela Vlada. We won't be interfering, but we will be working behind the scenes so everything goes as smoothly as possible. And again, welcome. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Emily. And hello, everybody. Yes, thanks for the introduction, Emily. My name's Greg Wagstaff, and welcome to my session today on doing, or is it making your best with collocations. Just to give you a little bit of information about myself, I'm a teacher and teacher trainer based in Seville in the south of Spain. And I'm also lucky enough to be one of 9 presenters for the Learn English with Cambridge YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, you haven't passed by, please come and say hello. There's some really great content on there for both teachers and students. So yeah, please come along and check out what we're doing there. But that's enough about me, and let's move on to what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I'm just going to recap a little bit on what exactly collocations are. That will only take a couple of minutes, and I'm then going to move on to the main part of my talk, or one of 2 main parts of my talk, which is something which I call the 3 R's. Now, this is an approach that I use in my classroom to help teach collocations, and is primarily about how we can teach learners to teach themselves. So that's the first part of my presentation. the first big part, sorry, and then the second part, practicing collocations. Now, this is essentially games and activities that you can use to teach collocations, whatever the topic is in your classroom. So yeah, those are the two main parts, and there'll be some time for questions at the end as well. But first of all, what's going to happen is that today's session, it's very practical. Okay, there's going to be lots of practical ideas. That's very much my style. It's very much how I like to give webinars. I like to give you teachers some good ideas for you to use either tomorrow or Friday or Monday, whenever you're next planning your lesson. And as a result, it's also very interactive. So what I would like to do, first of all, is a chat box test. Now, this is nice and simple, but in order for you guys to communicate with me today, I'm going to need you to talk through the chat box. So just to make sure we all know where the chat box is, could you please, in the chat box, just comment with your name and tell me where you're from, the city or country you're from as well, and so we can all make sure we know where the chat box is. Okay, they're coming in very, very quickly. Switzerland, Germany, Poland, thank you. Wow, lots of people. Russia, I think I saw Poland, Germany. Bath in England. Dimitri from Greece. Dominika from Poland, Iran, okay. South Africa as well. It's quite evident there's lots of you guys out there and lots of people from around the world. So thank you very much for coming by and stopping by here. I really appreciate it. And let's crack on with the talk. So first of all, what we're going to do is, I'm not going to begin with language, but what I'm going to do is begin with a number. Now, you've got two numbers on your screen here, and this means 7 out of 10. Okay, so what I want you to do is to think about this, 7 out of 10. Think about the topic, the title of this presentation, and then comment in the chat box with what is the significance of this? What does 7 out of 10 mean in relation to today's talk, please? When you think you have an idea, just please place your answer in the chat box, please. 7 out of 10 collocations are used wrong. 7 out of 10 have problems with do or make. I think that's more like 10 out of 10. Okay, lots of good answers coming in so far. You can remember 7 items out of 10 collocations in a short time. Thank you, that's a good answer. 70% of words in the text are collocations as well. Okay, I'm going to give you just a few more seconds. Okay, 7 out of 10. What's the significance of this in relation to today's session, please? Okay, so we have had the right answer, and it was one of the answers that I actually read out. So without further ado, 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 words occur in a form of collocation. Now, this was according to research done by a guy called Jimmy Hill. You can see his name at the bottom there. And first of all, what Hill says, and it's quite honest of him really, is that collocation, the term, what defines a collocation is open for debate. For example, some people may say a phrasal verb is a form of collocation. Some people may say not. However, like Hill says, even if that number comes down by a bit, for example, that it's 5 out of 10, for example, what that means is that 50% of the words that we use in English carry meaning as part of a greater phrase, as part of a greater chunk. And so I wanted to highlight that to you to show you really the importance that we have here in terms of how important collocations are for us as teachers to consider, and for us and for our learners as well. So yeah, quite a striking statistic. So what we're going to do is quickly move on to talking about what collocations are. So like I said, what actually makes up a collocation, the types of language that make up is open to debate, but the best definition for me of a collocation is a predictable combination of words. What that means is that if we see one word and there's a space before that word or after, we could pretty much make a good guess just because normally these words come together. And in terms of perhaps problems that come with teaching collocations, sometimes there's a lack of formal, that could be rules or agreements. What do we have? We have rules in this case. And also another thing that can be quite difficult is that context can play an important, again, that could be role or play, Let's roll there. And then finally, there's potentially unlimited number, amount, quantity of them. We've got number there. Okay, so obviously I was playing on it a little bit, but those are the problems that we have. Some people have problems with collocations like that. And actually, our knowledge of collocations helped us solve those particular gaps there. So yes, a predictable combination of words. So let's get on to one of the main parts of my presentation today, and that's the 3 R's. So what I'm going to be talking about here is an approach that I like to use in my classroom to teach collocations. Because collocations, one of the main problems are, like I referred to in the last slide, there's a big number of them. There's a big number, unlimited number of them, really. So this is an approach that we can use to try and I'm going to, first of all, do a task with you guys. Now, what I would like to do, again, please, in the chat box, I'm going to show you a text, okay? I'm going to show you a text. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to quickly read that text very, very quickly. And I would like you to comment in the chat box with what phrase means the same as a big life event has happened, okay? So I'm going to show you a text, find the phrase that means the same as a big life event has happened, and comment in the chat box, please. Okay, so we're getting some answers in. Fantastic, really good. People are very quick at reading it. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more seconds. There's a lot more answers coming in, and I'm glad to say that they're all pretty much the same answer, which is obviously a very good sign. Okay, a few more seconds. What phrase means the same as a big life event has happened? And okay, so I'm pleased to say that I think everybody, pretty much everybody, got the correct answer, and that, of course, was milestone passed. Let's move on. I've got another one for you. Okay, so again, please look at the text. It's the same text, and please write down the phrase that means to start to consider. What phrase means the same as start in the chat box? Wow. Have I done this activity with people before? Everybody seems to be getting the right answer and really quickly. So fantastic, really, really good. I'm going to leave it up for a few more seconds. Just please comment what phrase means the same as to start to consider. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and drum roll, please. Turn his thoughts to, or turn their thoughts to. Okay, and then one more finally. Okay, this one is to earn the admiration of someone. This text, it's the same text, but in a little bit of a different format. Okay, so please comment in the chat box what means to aim to earn the admiration of someone, please. Okay, so many answers coming in. It's a good job they're all the same answer because I can read them pretty easily, of course. Let's move on, have a look. Of course, you can see it's very thinly underlined there, but gaining the respect of. So, fantastic, guys. Now, the activity we've just done there is something called a book race. Now, a book race is something that you can do with physical books or digital books, like we've just done there online. If you're in an online setting still, you can do it there. And you can also do it with collocations that are highlighted, like we did in the last one, or collocations that aren't highlighted as well. And a little tip, when you do this activity with learners, just give them one life, because what can happen is that your pupils will shout out the first thing they see and just shout out lots of random things. So make sure you give them one life when doing this. So this book race is the first step in what I'm calling the 3 R's now, and that is teaching your learners to recognize collocation. So what I would do is that I would
Hello, so I think Greg's having issues on his side. If you would just bear with us a few minutes, just allow him to get back online and share his screen. Having a few technical problems. Yes, in the chat, there's no video, there's no sound. As I just said, we've lost Greg. I believe he had a poor connection, so just please bear with us. We're trying to get him back online. Hang in there. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, using collocations. Hi, Greg.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello, guys. Yes, sorry, I'm back. There's a bit of a problem there. I'm going to launch the presentation and we'll get going again. So apologies for that. A few technical problems. Yeah, we go. So right now, that was the perfect opportunity to stop, compose ourselves. And now let me tell you about what I mean by these 3 R's. Now, one of the biggest problems that I have, that all teachers I think have, a lot of teachers that I speak to when I'm teaching collocations, is there's just so many of them. So many of them. If you think about the amount of words we have in English language, you can multiply that by infinity, and that's how many collocations we have. So how can we effectively teach them in our classrooms? The 3 R's is a way of reducing the pressure. And what the idea is that you teach your pupils how to teach themselves, as you can see here. Because quite simply, we might have our pupils in our classroom for, I don't know, maybe an hour or 2 hours, maybe if we're lucky, 3 hours sometimes in academies. However, those 3 hours are simply not enough to teach them collocations and to teach them all parts of the grammar that we have to as well. So what we're going to try and encourage amongst our learners, if we can, particularly before the summer holidays and particularly in light of trying to make up lost term time, is to encourage our learners to teach collocations to themselves. So the first step in this would be what we're speaking about, and that is recognizing. Now, so we've looked at something, how to recognize a collocation. We've done that through a book race. The second step in these 3 R's will be something called research. Now, collocations. How do we find out information for collocations? We've looked at them, we recognize them, and now we have to research them. We perhaps could look in dictionaries, perhaps we could look, we could Google things. However, for me, the best tool that your learners can have is something called corpora. Now, corpora is basically, I'll put the definition on the screen for you. They're databases. They're databases collected from various media, various internet around the world that keeps all of the information about a word's collocates. Now, that's the important things like frequency and context as well. They're really useful for teachers, of course, but some of us are L1 speakers or some of us are L1 equivalents, so we don't really need to educate ourselves as much as what our learners do. So let me give you a quick demonstration of what a corpora can do specifically for your students. So the best place to start is englishcorpora.org. Now, as you can see down the left here, we've got lots and lots of different kinds of corpora here. And what you can do is, if you go into one, you get a search function that looks a bit like this. I've chosen the adjective worrying here. For example, I'm a student and I see worrying plus another word in a text. I've recognized that, but I want to investigate it more. So I would come to a corpora. I would write in a word like worrying. I would then ask to see what nouns it collocates with. And I would click find collocate. And what it will do is bring up a list of all of the words that collocate most with the word worrying. And as we can see, as some of you may have predicted, at the very top here, we have both trend and trends. These are the 2 most common collocates of the word worrying. So this is great for our pupils. Imagine you have a pupil, they've found a collocation by themselves and they're thinking, how is it actually useful? Do I actually need it? And they come onto here and they can look and they can see that the frequency is really, really high, which means that we do indeed use it a lot. So that's frequency, but your pupil also wants to know about what kind of context do I use it in? Is it a formal, informal context? Where would I find it? If you click on the word, then you will also find the word itself or the collocate itself in context. You can find the source here, where it was said or where it was written. Here, you can hear it being said. And also here as well, you can find the actual original source. And it shows you a brief sentence here, as well as any words that might come in between. So worrying upward twang, we can see that is by far the most common collocative pattern that we have here. So that's corpora. Now, unfortunately, I don't have time to go into detail to demonstrate it all to you today, but I would encourage you to really research it yourself and really encourage your students to discover it, because it's simply something fantastic, because you can find all of the information about a collocation in one place. And if you do want a more detailed explanation, I would recommend looking at this explanation from Larry Zwire. He gives a really good demonstration of how to use a corpora, how to use a corpus, sorry, or how to use corpora. And you can find that here at the Cambridge On Demand Library as well. So that's the second step. We've looked at recognizing, we've looked at researching, and now finally, we're going to look at teaching our learners to record collocations. Now, this is a really important last stage as well, because of course, learners can find them, they can research them, but if they don't make a note of them, if they don't make a reference of them, how can they actually come back and remind themselves of what they are? So you can do this by various means. Okay, you've got collocation forks and collocation bubbles, like you can find here in the new series. Or what you can do is get your students to design their own. These are some of my pupils, and what they've done, they designed mini books for collocations. You've also got a kind of collocation box, which one of my private students did, and another one which I'm quite proud of, because this is one of my students who tries really, really hard, and I think she's going to be really happy that I put this on here today. One of my private students called Marie Jose, this is something that she devised. Okay, so the idea is that you have the collocation or the word put in the middle, and the collocations that are most frequent is what you put around the middle. And as they become less and less frequent, you put them around the outside. So teaching learners to record collocations, that would be the third step. Again, you need to revisit over time. Okay, it's like anything, pupils forget. They need to be reminded of how to do these things. Providing choice, that's something really important. I don't think it's our role as teachers to say to our pupils, this is how you record a collocation. I think it's really important that we give them choice and possibly freedom to design their own, like Marie Jose. And a little point here as well, this is a little bugbear of mine, the back of their notebooks. This is something I used to do, and a lot of my colleagues used to do, and it was until one colleague suggested to me, when we get our pupils to record them in the back of their notebooks, they stay in their notebooks, at the back of their notebooks, and they rarely ever get revisited again. So what I think was a better idea, and what I personally use, is that I get my pupils to record them throughout their book. That way, they're much more likely to both come across them and to revisit them and to hopefully learn them even better. So the 3 R's, okay, this is the end of the first part of my presentation. This is where I talk about this process, where I think the best way to combat teaching collocations and how big they are is to educate our learners on how to teach themselves. So that's the process of recognizing, researching, and then recording as well. We have the summer coming up. Okay, so I think this, if you have time, is a really nice process to take a lesson and show to your pupils. And I'd recommend doing this by something quite fun and quite interesting, which is the use of songs. As I just mentioned, it's an interesting and personal way to teach this process to your pupils. And songs are really rich in collocations. And not only that, if they're part of the chorus, for example, they're repeated, which is of course really, really good. And then also there's rhythm. We know that songs and chants and the rhythm actually help our learners memorize things better. So I'd start with a song. You can see there, one of my favorite singers is on the screen, and she's Adele. And if we look at part of a song of hers, like Someone Like You, there's some really, really good language there that we can pull out. I haven't highlighted all of the collocations there, but there's just a few of them. But yeah, if you want to introduce your pupils to this process, why not do it through a song? It's something, it's a nice context for them to learn it. Okay, now what we're going to do is the second half of my presentation. So what we've done, we've looked at a way of teaching collocations, an approach to teaching collocations with our learners. Now I'm going to look at practicing collocations. And here I've got a few activities that you can do, whatever the collocation may be that you're teaching. So first of all, I'm going to introduce this game, Pelmanisms. Now, this is a classic game. It's a matching game. Essentially, pupils have pieces of paper on the table, and they have to match up two halves of collocation. So what I'm going to do now is I actually have some help from Emily. So Emily, if you're there and if you can hear me, could you please make yourself known? What Emily's going to do is Emily's going to demonstrate Pelmanisms and various adaptations of Pelmanisms that you can have. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen, Emily, and if you could start sharing it, here we go.
Okay. There we go.
Now, just thank you, Emily. Just before Emily starts, what I'm going to do is explain. This is a program called EduCans, and you can actually make your own Pelmanisms online. And I'm going to ask Emily, nice and simple, just to begin with, if you could match up two pairs of collocations on the screen, please. So a shock. What could match with a shock? Emily's going to choose something else. Oh, wow. First time.
First time. Yeah.
Have you been practicing?
I didn't get this one yesterday.
Oh, okay. So that's the first one. And can you match up one more for me as well, please, Emily? Oh, wow, Emily, smashing it. Fantastic start. Now, what I'm going to ask Emily to do now is I'm going to ask her to repeat the same task. However, whatever collocation she matches up, I would like you, Emily, just to make a sentence with it as well, please.
Okay, so I start over again. Should I just choose another one?
Yeah, just choose another one. Yeah. Okay, not quite.
I can't have a terrible memory. Right?
I think we're something. So Emily's going to give us a sentence now, Emily.
My daughter, Emma, did the minimum this year to pass her math class.
Okay. She passed at least.
She passed at least.
And one more as well, please, Emily, and then an example as well.
Give someone a lift. I give my colleague a lift to work every day.
Fantastic, thank you. So what we've done there, Emily started by doing the classic Pelmanism game, and then she did the classic one, but this time producing a sentence. I also have some more variations as well. Emily, could you go now on to the second game as well, please?
Yeah. Can you see that?
I can, yeah, that's perfect. And if you click play, what's going to happen here before Emily starts is this is a variation of Pelmanisms and its collocation upgrades. What's going to happen is that Emily's going to choose, there's going to be a phrase of a certain level that makes sense, it's good English, but what Emily's going to do, she's going to match it with a collocation that's of a slightly higher English level. Okay, so Emily, when you're ready again, if you could please go for it.
Deliriously happy. Strong accent. Oh, was it number 8?
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Emily, can I ask you to do it again? Match another pair, and this time again, give me a sentence with the collocation.
Oh, I saw that one before.
Okay, so if you could just give me a sentence with mitigating circumstances, Emily, please.
Difficult one. The judge considered the mitigated circumstances of the case. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Thanks, Emily. And just one more as well, please. One more.
Sure. Ah, perfect. To be deliriously happy or to be very happy.
And could we have just a phrase with deliriously happy, please?
I'm very happy to have so many teachers around the world join us for this webinar.
Thank you, Emily. Deliriously happy. Fantastic. Okay, Emily, if you could stop sharing your screen and I'll come back to the presentation, please. Okay, one moment, everybody. Let's get back on to where we were. Okay, here we go. So, what we're going to do, so obviously with Pelmanisms here, now we have it in its most classic format. However, we saw some adaptations there, okay? Some adaptations that I like to use when teaching collocations. So every time my pupils pay collocations, I ask them to make sentences with them. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity if they're doing these Pelmanisms and collocations and not actually making sentences. So that's one adaptation you can do. Upgrading language. This is something I'm a really big fan of because we're not teaching our pupils collocations from nothing. We're linking it to what they actually know already. We're providing a form of scaffolding, if you will. And then we're linking our new collocation to that. So we're building on what they know. Thirdly, students make them. So a lot of cynics out there would say, oh, that's great because it means less work for you. And okay, it does mean less work for you, which of course is never a bad thing. But more importantly, pupils making Pelmanisms and in general, pupils making resources, it's another teaching opportunity. It's another way of them thinking, interacting with the language, processing the language even more. So why not get your pupils to make them? Team Pelmanisms, of course, are really, really good. You can have 2 or 3 people on a team. What that means is that they learn from each other. And of course, what it also means is incidental language going on. Is it my turn? Is it your turn? Is that correct? And also matching words to pictures as well. Now, it can be fun for any level, really, any age. But of course, it's something really useful for, say, lower levels and younger learners as well. So we've looked there at Pelmanisms and 5 different adaptations that you can do with them as well. This is something that I'm a big fan of. I'm going to talk about again. And this is the whole matching. I put matching the paraphrases, but that's upgrading language. Now, what we saw Emily do was we took something that a pupil of a certain level would already know, okay, to have bad weather. They know this, okay? And rather than bringing in a collocation completely out of the blue from nowhere, we're actually bringing in a collocation and matching to what they know and building upon it. And that's something really, really good that in the English collocations collocations in use book, they've got lots of activities like this, which I'm genuinely a really, really big fan of. Taking what our pupils know and then building on it. So look out for those upgrading language, and whenever you can, try to introduce this into your class, maybe through Pelmanisms or maybe through another means as well. Okay, another activity. Now, this is quite a simple one, but a very physical one. It's a very on your feet, stand up sort of activity. And it's called River or Jump the Line. Now, I've always called it River. Some people call it Jump the Line. You can call it whatever you want, but let me explain it. I'm just going to explain how it works. Now, what you can do is you can choose 2 linked language items. For example, the classic one, which somebody mentioned it in the chat earlier, is make and do. For example, we have make here and we have do here. Our pupils stand in a vertical line down the classroom, and we have make here and we have do here, and our pupils in the middle. What happens is that you call out a part of a collocation. So, for example, something that collocates with make the bed. You call it out. And then pupils in the middle, if it collocates with make, they step to one side. If it collocates with do, they step to the other side. So that's the idea, that pupils are in a line and they step to one side depending on what the word collocates with. However, there is a bit of competition involved. The last person to move, or the person that chooses correctly, is eliminated. So it's a nice, simple, really easy to do physical activity to just, for the pure act of our pupils deciding what word collocates with what. I am aware that we do live currently in a COVID world and a COVID climate, so there are some socially distanced alternatives. Now, in a classroom, that could be forming two lines as opposed to one line, so people have more space in between. It can also be your pupils sitting down and possibly raising their arms or raising pieces of paper, and you can also repeat this online as well. And another variation at the same time is you can have a third option. They can stay in the middle if there's a third option. So something really simple. And once your pupils know how it works, they're quickly on their feet and they're quickly into the game. So river or jump the line. On to my final activity. And what I wanted to do here was link collocations to a production activity as well. Often the key to successfully being fluent in a production activity is successful use of collocations. And I'm just going to model a activity that I do in class. So I'd also like you to write in the chat box, because what I'm going to do is show you a series of words or phrases, and I would like you to look at those words or phrases and then comment with what word collocates with them. So in the chat box, please, could you please comment with what word collocates with these, please? Okay, we've got one answer in. There might be more than one answer. There might be more than one answer. Okay, we're mainly getting at technology, tools. Tools could work as well. Okay, my particular answer is technology, but like I said, there could be more than one answer. So what about which words collocate with these as well, please? Okay, lots of correct answers coming in. My particular answer is the environment, or environment simply. And finally here, this could be lots of things. This could be lots of things, but what word or phrase collocates with these, please? Okay, software, apps, program, technology, again, a program, app, software, Facebook, program. Okay, well, they're all based around the same topic and they're all correct. My particular one was social media. So this little activity is called 5-word stories now, and they're particularly useful for helping our students prepare for production activities. If we take, for example, an essay question in the first exam, okay, we've got 3 topics here. We've got technology, we've got environment, and a topic of our own choice. What we've done with these 5-word stories is we've brainstormed ever so quickly 5 collocations for each category, which they can use in their writing straight away. In terms of how to carry it out, you or the students could prepare them. You could prepare them before the class, or using corpora, maybe you could ask your pupils to prepare, maybe in separate groups, collocations for each topic. It can also be done via reveal games as well. So like we did there, I did it via a reveal game. You could do that in class. And this is important. Yeah, make a note of them as well, because as we know, in lots of the Cambridge Suite exams, in the writing activities in particular, a lot of the themes are recycled, whether it's the environment, technology, whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's family. So keep them and use them for next time. And like I said, this is something that you can use for production activities, both kinds of production activities. We can use it for writing, and we can also use it for speaking as well. And why are 5-word stories particularly useful? There's There's two main reasons. Now, collocations, a lot of people will argue, and I do believe this, that collocations can help improve fluency because a lot of our pupils will produce sentences like this. This technology is the newest and best technology. Now, that is grammatically fine. It makes sense. There's nothing particularly wrong with that sentence. But if we have a collocation to hand that we can use, for example, it's cutting edge technology, that just in an instant makes our pupils sound ever so slightly more fluent. So these 5-word stories and the collocations that they produce, they can actually help our pupils sound a lot more fluent in production activities. And this is something I particularly like. They can actually provide microstructures to us as well. So if we look at these 5 terms that we looked at, to install, to delete, to be addicted to spend time on, to update, if we rearranged these collocations into this kind of order, to install, to spend time on. I installed social media on my computer. I then spent too much time on social media. I was constantly updating my social media. I became addicted to my social media, and then I had to delete my social media. They actually can provide an almost mini structure, a microstructure within their writing or within their speaking. So not only can it help them sound more fluent, but it can also give them, like I said, those microstructures that really give like a nice a structure to their writing. So that's the end. We're near enough at the end there. So just a quick recap is, yeah, one of the best ways, or a really nice way that I like to use in class is teaching learners to be more autonomous in their collocation learning. Okay, and that's by a process of recognizing, research, and then recording as well. Collocations are vast. There's so many out there. Try to reduce the pressure on yourselves, particularly as with the summer term coming up so quickly, and use things like a book race to recognize, corpora use, which is really, really useful, or recording strategies to record as well. And don't forget, a nice little way to introduce that is through using songs in your class. And in terms of activities, we've got the classic game of Pelmanisms there, okay? And then we've got 5 different variations. And don't forget as well, with Pelmanisms, with these pieces of paper, you don't have to play them in a game format. You can turn them over and pupils can simply match them up as well. There's always lots of different ways you can recycle these materials and extend the activity. River, jump the line. And 5-word stories, both for production, speaking and writing, both kinds of production activities as well. So we've got those, we've got the ways of recognizing, researching and recording, and using songs as well. So just my final task, I'd like to ask out of interest, really for my own research, which one would you use first? Which one did you like in particular? Yes, like I said, out of interest for myself, I'd like to know, which one would you use first, please? Okay, fantastic. Somebody said upgraded language. Thank you. Someone after my own heart. Pelmanisms, 5-word stories, jump the river. Pelmanisms because you only teach online. Yeah, that's a real benefit of that program that we saw from Educandy, is that you can use it online. Okay, fantastic. So, guys, thank you very much. You've been absolutely great. We're really, really receptive. I'm just going to obviously point out as well that all the examples you saw today were taken from the book English Collocations in Use. In the series as well, you've got English idioms in use and English phrasal verbs in use. So there's a series here that deals with everyday language, and often our books, they're often a grammatical syllabus, which means that maybe collocations, idioms or phrasal verbs don't get that much attention. They maybe get a portion of attention. So it's really nice to have books here and a series that actually gives the attention that I think they need. So I'd like to now hand back to Emily, who's going to provide me with any questions. Somebody said they love English phrasal verbs in use. Thank you. That's great to hear. Emily, are you there?
Yes, we have a number of questions.
Oh, wow.
Thank you,
Okay.
first of all, for your very informative session. As you can see, there are quite a number of very positive comments. And people seem to be very grateful for the tips you've provided.
Okay.
So would you like me to read the questions, or would you like to, can you see them?
So in the Q&A, let me have a look. So,
Q&A, yeah.
Okay. Lucy Tilney, presumably frequency and collocations change depending on fashion and events. Well, yes, I mean, over the course of time, it can change, of course. Something that may have been considered formal to begin with can change over time as well. I've lost that question now, but that can happen. That's the beauty of corpora. That's the thing as well, Lucy. It can inform you about, you can see the language in context, and you can actually see the date of when it was written or spoken. So you can see perhaps a piece of writing from the 1980s, and then it's used in quite a formal situation, and you can maybe see over time how it's become a lot more informal as well. Can we use collocations with absolute beginners, and is there a good website for all level learners? Sahida, thank you for your question. Sahida, I think so. It's an absolute must, I think, with beginners. Like, even with younger learners, we should be trying as much as possible to teach them those chunks, which collocations are, from an early age. They might not have maybe the mindset to produce grammar and to think on the spot. So to give them these automatic chunks, like how I use, obviously a classic one that we teach to our learners, it's really, really important. In terms of a good website for collocations, there's no real, obviously, central hub for all collocations. You can look at corpora, but that's not really appropriate for younger learners, for example. I would simply say choose things that are level appropriate. So for younger learners, maybe phrases like "How are you?" "What are you doing?" Things like this. Teach them chunks, but it is really important, particularly at lower levels as well. And Ajoy, that's your question again. As soon as they come to your academy or a school, we should be looking to teach them collocations. Right, let's have a look. Jata, I do not find the time to prepare these exercises myself. Do some of these websites offer those exercises at different levels? Yeah, of course. There's always websites out there that offer lots of different types of collocations. What are particularly good if you want them in a game format are quiz platforms, things like Kahoot and Quizlet. They often have ready-made collocation quizzes that you can just use, or maybe not Pelmanism style, but in a quiz style at least. But it's really worth, before you go and make it yourself, because you're right, Jata, particularly as we get to the end of term, we're running out of time. Before you make a make or do presentation, please go to, I don't know, Kahoot or Quizlet and see if there's one already made. Again, Eskir, that's a similar answer to your question. Okay, in terms of websites similar to Educandy, I would recommend platforms like Kahoot, like Quizlet. I mean, if anyone, maybe there's some more people maybe anyone wants to contribute in the chat box, more platforms that are similar to Educandy. I'm sorry if I pronounced you wrong. Oh, sorry, Emily.
No, there's actually one question, I believe that went somehow into a different tab, but using word clouds, is that a good, you're asking if that was a good option as well?
Using word what, sorry?
Word clouds or word maps?
Yes, of course. Well, as a form of recording, collocations, yeah.
I think, well, the complete question was, do you encourage your students to use word clouds or word maps to record their collocations?
Well, that raises an important point, I think, is that you need to provide them with the options and they need to choose. We all learn in slightly different ways. And I think our role as teachers is not to say, this is what you should be using. This is what I want you to use. It's providing options and then letting them choose as well. So collocation forks, word clouds, word maps, provide them with options and then let them choose what they feel most comfortable with. Why are they called 5-word stories? Well, because they're essentially made up of 5 words or 5 different phrases, and they're called stories because a lot of the time you can actually rearrange them, like I said, to provide a microstructure to your writing or to your speaking. So I'll repeat what 5-word stories are. So the idea is you or your pupils find five collocations of a certain word, for example, technology, and then you practice them before they do a writing. I often found that when teaching writing, before setting a writing task for my pupils, I would almost obsess over the structure. I would be like, you've got to plan it. I want this fit in the first paragraph. So I want this in the second. I want this in the third, this in the fourth, this in the fifth. And my pupils would still struggle. And I came to the conclusion it's because they didn't actually it wasn't the structure that was a problem. I think you can teach the structure quite quickly to a pupil. This is the introduction, conclusion, 3 paragraphs. What they often lack is the language to sound fluent. And it's quite often when you mark something from a pupil, you get those really long sentences that, like I said, they make sense. They make sense, and there's some quite good language in there, but they're really, really long, and it makes their writing quite diluted. And that's where these collocations come in. They can condense a sentence that's this long into something that's this long, and of course, fit more information at the same time. What is the origin of Pelmanism? Now, correct me if I don't know if anybody knows out there, but I think there was the Pelman Institute in the 1890s. I think they're the ones that designed this activity. And that's where the word Pelmanism came from. I remember reading that a little while ago. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, but that's where I believe the word Pelmanism comes from. Is there a differentiation of levels in the book? Yes, I believe so. I don't know if Gabrielle is there, but I believe there are different levels. Of course, sometimes it's hard to attribute a collocation to a particular level. For example,
you actually have two. If we're talking about the collocation and use series, there are 2 books. There's intermediate and advanced. There's no lower level. We started at intermediate level.
There we go. Okay, so thanks for that, Emily. How do you raise students' awareness of collocations, as in introducing the concept? So, well, I showed you one activity, of course, which could be a book race you could introduce. But I think what's really important when you introduce it is that you make them aware of what you're doing. And quite often, using their own L1 is quite a good way of doing that. Introducing the concept of a collocation, if I said to my pupils, it's a predictable combination of words, they'd probably look at me and think, I don't really know what you mean. Whereas if I use a small bit of Spanish in my class and use a word and ask them, what could be the word that comes before? And they're firing, like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. That's a really nice way to bring up the topic of collocation and explain what it is. And then from that, I would use things like book races, any kind of noticing activities. Maybe a dictogloss is sometimes a good one. A dictogloss is where they copy down what you're dictating to them. And quite often, the gaps that they leave are the words they don't know, and they're quite often collocations. So that's how I would do it. Be open and honest to begin with, explain what a collocation is, and then do any kind of noticing activity which allows them to focus in on what collocations are. Oh, right, Saf. Again, if I say your name incorrectly, I'm very sorry, but Safi, what's the difference between idioms and collocations? Now, this is open to debate. A lot of people will say what an idiom is that it's within collocations, you have what you call strong and weak collocations. Now, strong collocations are those collocations that pairs of words that you often see together. For example, mitigating circumstances is what we saw from Emily earlier. Now, mitigating, there's nothing else in English, I don't think, that goes with mitigating. And with circumstances, I don't think there's much else that goes with that. That's a very strong collocation. Weak might be something like any collocation of day, a bad day, a good day, a grey day, a something day. What idioms are, they tend to be really, really strong collocations, like you can't really break them up. And also they tend to be just not, the most idiomatic idioms are just not very literal, like raining cats and dogs. That's not very obvious what's going on there. Or maybe something like turn up out of the blue. Again, it's not too obvious. An idiom is generally a collocation that it's not very obvious from reading it without knowing what it actually is, and it's usually something quite strong. It can't be really, it can't be, it's not often seen with many other words. Which corpora do I recommend using? I wouldn't ever like to recommend using one, Christopher. However, the website I would recommend using is englishcorpora.org. Maybe we could put that in the chat, but that's the best place to start, Christopher, there, because then what you've got there, you've got a directory of different corpora. I couldn't really recommend one because some favour American English, some favour Canadian English, some favour British English, some incorporate all English. And as we know, there's no particular right or correct form of English anymore. English is English. So I'd recommend going to the directory and then sort of working out which one you like most, which one you're most comfortable with.
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, sorry, Emily, I'm reading them.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone in particular you want me to read?
Quite a number of questions.
Any particular songs? Adele, someone like you, of course, I would recommend again. Adele's generally great because she sings nice and slowly, so we'll work out what's going on.
Oh, some people want your email address.
Yeah,
I have a fan group. We will be. We don't usually share, obviously, that type of information, but we will be sending an email with the recording, so you'll be able to refer back to Greg's slides, and in that email you will have our contact details, so the press contact details, and any comments you want to make to us. Of course, we will bring to Greg's attention. One more question then. We have a lot of, what's the difference between idioms and collocations? Which corpora, you answered that one?
Yeah,
phrasal verbs.
I mean, if we had, could you give some tips about teaching idiomatic expressions some other time as well? I mean, if I had to do it in a nutshell now, it really has to be in context. Idiomatic language, it has to have context behind it because like I said, they're often very figurative, very metaphorical language that without context don't really mean anything. So a general rule with teaching collocations, idioms, and to an extent phrasal verbs is that it's really important that you put them in a context that can bring it to life, not just simply the idiom on a page with a definition next to it. It doesn't really mean a lot.
Okay, thank you. I think that brings the session to an end. Thank you very much, Greg, for your very nice and informative webinar. So as I mentioned earlier, the session is recorded. It will be sent to you via email. Once I close the webinar today, normally you should have a little pop-up window with a link. If you click on that link, you'll have a feedback form that comes. If you could just fill that out, and at the end of that, you will be able to download your certificate. So there we go. Again, thank you very much, Greg, and thank you to my colleagues behind the scenes, Wendy and Gabriella, and I hope to see you at our next webinar. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye, Greg.